Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
I know you are expecting this week's national interest from me, but what you're going to get is something else. It is writings on the wall. So not the usual national interest column, but an occasional series that I write, particularly when I travel through a state or a part of the country going through elections. Sometimes I've also done it in neighboring countries as well, at least in countries where I know some of the language. So what is writings on the wall? People who've read me for a long time, because this occasional series has now carried on for about 25 years. In fact, the first writings in this series, occasional series writings on the wall, probably were published sometime in 1999, and this has carried on since then. What exactly is writings on the wall? What is the concept? Let me also explain it to those of you who might not be familiar, because we have so many new readers and viewers thanks to the fact that so many of you have shown confidence, interest, patience and time in good journalism, good serious journalism. And if so, writings on the wall is really up your street, if I may mix metaphors. So writings on the wall is an idea that emerged through about 3 decades of travel, mostly in pole-bound India. This installment comes to you from the Kashmir Valley. It is also my first experience of watching an election in so sensitive, vital and fascinating region. First, what is writing on the wall? It means literally looking at the walls to see what's changing and what isn't, what the people want and what they absolutely don't want. The walls also tell us what the people are buying. Branded underwear, for example, in Nitish's Bihar in 2010, or if people are too broke to be buying anything at all in Lalu's Bihar 2005, for example. I will explain this to you. In 2005, last days of Lalu's tenure, when we went to Bihar the first time, I was searching for writings on the wall, and it struck me that first of all, there were no writings on the wall, almost nothing, which means people really didn't have the surplus to buy anything, because when you go looking at the walls, you can find out if it's a green revolution zone, you will find the wall selling tractors, agricultural loans, fertilizers, cement. Then as an area gets more industrialized or little bit richer, then you get mutual funds, you can get bank fixed deposits, things like that, or you can find tobacco, snuff, things like that. That used to be more the case in the past. In Bihar of 2005, there was almost nothing. In fact, in most of rural Bihar then, there were no walls because it was all kacha, thatched. So what will you put there? And then we started finding, soon enough, as times changed, so some things started coming up, if not on the walls, then on electricity poles, where there were electricity poles, or even on trees. And that was mostly about English medium primary education. Bring your kid to my school, I will give your kid modern education. That is the first stirring of change we saw. Between that and 5 years, 5 years after Nitish's rule, we found the walls now painted wherever the walls were with branded underwear. The usual branded underwear like TT, Rupa, Dollar, etc., etc. So what was the conclusion? That in a state where it looked like nobody had any surplus to buy anything, nobody had any need to sell anything, enough people had enough surplus to buy even branded underwear, which is so important for comfort, for enhancing quality of life. So the conclusion then was that in the first 5 years of Nitish Kumar's rule in Bihar, things had changed substantively and substantially for the better. Those are the kinds of indications we get looking at the walls, and that's why the metaphor writings on the wall. This in fact gives us a quick peek into the state of an economy, politics, society and change. In this case, the example that I used of Bihar, for the better. I'm also sharing with you all the earlier reports in the same series with the description of this episode. In the Kashmir Valley, where 2 of the 3 constituencies, Srinagar and Baramulla, have polled already, and Anantnag and Rajouri vote this Saturday, 3 things stand out. Or let's say 3 de-hyphenations stand out. Although you can read only one of these straight off the walls. For the other 2, you have to step inside them. Here are the three de-hyphenations. First, the youth, who constitute a significant section of Kashmiris, have de-hyphenated their minds, at least for now, from the politics of radicalism, separatism, anger and grievance. Don't be deluded into believing that it's all over. It sits there and comes out when young people think they can trust you enough and talk freely. The priority, however, for now is education and competition. Second, there is a new complete de-hyphenation from Pakistan. It also comes from the simultaneous phenomenon of the catastrophic decline in Pakistani national power and the rise in India's. And the third, at the tactical and ground level, is the security agencies' success in de-hyphenating weapons from the people. For example, everybody knows there are plenty of weapons in the valley. They are hidden, some are hidden here, some are hidden there, and still there are many people who are trained and motivated to use them. But the cord has been cut for now or de-hyphenated. So those people have no access to those weapons, or whoever controls this business is not able to get these weapons to those people. These are the three vital de-hyphenations we begin with. You can safely say that in most parts of India, except probably some states in the north, especially Punjab, where immigration / visa / IELTS dominate, the walls are generally filled with hoardings and posters of competition academies. See those pictures on your screen, and also see some of the brilliant illustrations that Soham Sen and Pragya Ghosh have drawn. Now, as I said, you can find these hoardings and posters anywhere in India. I do not think, however, that they are as prominent and as dominant as in the Kashmir Valley. Allen Career Institute, Chanakya IAS Academy, Elite IAS, Emerge Institute of Coaching, the Commercians, Vedantu, Nucleus Institute of Excellence, literally scores of brands fill the walls. Trees, unipoles, just about any place you could hang or stick anything onto. Everybody wants to crack UPSC, NEET, JEE, all the things young people across the country covet. So many of these hoardings have portraits of their successful students. See some of those. See this one particularly from Nucleus. This is the post-stone throwing generation of Kashmiris. They are also the valley's new future. I messaged my friend and old colleague Uday Shankar, yes, formerly of Star Disney, now a formidable entrepreneur in his own right. I messaged him to tell him I see so many hoardings of his new coaching academy venture, Allen, that perhaps the place should be renamed the Valley of Allen or Allenistan. He told me with pride how many young Kashmiris are cracking these exams to become doctors, engineers, and so on. If you were one of those still nostalgic about the heyday of militancy and separatism, you might call it a great distraction. Even if it is so, there couldn't be a more virtuous distraction. If so many thousands of boys, and importantly, girls, want to compete with the best and look for careers in the rest of the country, it's the kind of change not even a doubling of defense budgets or laws 3 times tougher than UAPA could bring about. The walls also give us the starkest evidence of what hasn't changed and the tensions that lie within. Walk along Gupkar Road, the VVIP row of Srinagar, where the mightiest in Kashmir live. That's why the alliance the key valley parties once formed was called the Gupkar Alliance. Each home is a fortress with reinforced concrete walls going up to 18 feet, sometimes more. Please see the pictures and the sketch. 18 feet and sometimes even more. On top of that wall, you might find strengthened steel sheets, crowned with concertina fencing even on top of that. This adds up to an obstacle so high, even a great pole vaulter, the greatest pole vaulter like Sergei Bubka, would fail to jump over it. This isn't about to change anytime soon, as I am schooled by Farooq Abdullah for almost 2 hours under a tree. Things are better, he acknowledges, violence is not there, but that doesn't mean young people aren't angry. They see Delhi as vindictive. Too many are imprisoned, sent to jails in faraway states. My best effort at a translation and summary of this calm tutorial over a bowl of fresh chopped strawberries would be something like, peace is alright, but where is the peace dividend? Things are better, people are appreciating peace, and illusions about Pakistan are over, but take nothing for granted. A lot of what he talks about is history, the many twists and turns over the decades since he began his public life as a subaltern to his father. He is, after all, one of the senior most, oldest, and yet among the most energetic and passionate public figures in India. That passion speaks out when we return to Article 370. They say that, and I am quoting him now, They said that after abrogation, we Kashmiris have become Indians. Are you telling me we weren't Indians before? I do my best to persuade him to finish the memoir he keeps talking about. I tell him, Farooq Saab, it's very important that future generations should know what happened. Give us your eyes view. Don't leave this job unfinished. Because as with any chronic geopolitical and emotional issue, the past is very much a guide to the future. It doesn't apply to any place more than it does to Kashmir. We all need to learn more from him and truthfully. For example, the rigging of the election in his favor under Rajiv Gandhi in 1987, which he denies. If he had rigged it, he says, how come Alisha Gilani and 4 others from his side were elected nevertheless? Another Kashmiri political veteran who should be writing a sizzling memoir, though from an ideology you wouldn't expect to find here, is Mohammad Yusuf Tariqami. See his picture. He has kept the flag of the CPIM, yes, Communist Party of India, Marxist, aloft in the state for many years, winning elections to the state assembly often. In fact, he tells you that he started in 1967 during the Six-Day War in the Middle East between Israel and the Arab countries, and he was among the young people who came out to protest in favor of Palestine. Then the party was called Democratic Front in Kashmir, and he was immediately jailed and has spent a lot of time in jail since then. Spend an hour with him, as I did, and he will tell you of the many attempts on his life, including one where 9 next to him in a tiny rally were killed, and of one of his several incarcerations where the jailer summoned him one day suddenly to say he was being given parole, though he hadn't asked for it. The reason was that his wife had died delivering their first child. He married again subsequently, but later his father-in-law was killed as well. Never short of courage, the comrade acknowledges the improvements, the respect for law being the most important. The government, however, needs to move on, he says. And everybody talks about something called FIR Raj. What that means is that in the past, if there was ever an FIR filed, stone throwing, terror financing, any terror act or links with terrorists, in the past, if an FIR was filed against any of your close relations, today you would be denied a passport and even a government job because you will fail police verification. That is what is called FIR Raj. And anybody you talk to in the valley talks about this FIR Raj in anger and resentment. The center, he says, has to move on from the mode of managing to that of engaging with the people of Kashmir. You want to know what courage is? It has to be physical as well as moral and philosophical. He will call out the entire left liberal community that still blames the then Governor Jagmohan, for triggering, even sponsoring the plight and flight of the Kashmiri Pandits. That actually becomes a kind of reflect that, oh, this was not a local phenomenon, this is not something that was done by militants, terrorists, this is something that Jagmohan as a BJP loyalist triggered and also sponsored. He disagrees with that and has the courage to say so. And he says, and I quote, I have never said so and never will. They were driven out by the militants, he says, and reels off names of prominent Pandits killed at that point to trigger that panic. The biggest massacres and atrocities. The name of the sessions judge, Nilkant Ganju, who had sentenced JKLF's Makbul Butt to death, for example, and who we've forgotten all about. Tariqami too lives in a fortress like the other key leaders. He also tells me wistfully the story of how and why I was given this bungalow. That's the story of many attacks on his life and the near things. That's the reason the government gave him that bungalow, so he could be safe. This is the story of everybody in Kashmir who's been in public life, without exception. That's why it's even more creditable that they hang on and keep the political process going. That's why they are also national treasures, whatever party they might be from. What's the toughest job in India? The most challenging, dangerous and ultimately thankless? Short answer, it is to be the governor, now Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir. Because ultimately all governors go and no governor can go back saying that I solved the problem or I was successful. Every governor is basically carrying the baton up to a place and handing it over to the next guy, and they keep running around the same elliptical track. Nothing moves conclusively from point A to B. That's why it is such a thankless job. It's an incredibly pretty Raj Bhavan. It could also be the prettiest prison in India. A lot of power resides here though. Manoj Sinha, the dhoti-clad politician from eastern Uttar Pradesh's Ghazipur, sports a generous tuft and a buzzing mind. As Chief Administrator of the Union Territory with no elected legislature, he is probably the most powerful official in the country. He lists the things he has done to straighten things out. Denial of jobs to the immediate family members of the top militant/separatist leaders being one. And he says, and I quote, "This is how crises were resolved in the past." What he means is that jobs and contracts were offered to separatists' families in return for a respite from hartals and stone throwing. It is over now, he says. His administration has found all such employees after a thorough search and used Article 311 of the Constitution to fire them. It is a territory of about 1.35 crore people with 4.8 lakh government jobs. Another 1.27 lakhs are hired as daily wagers with written commitments for confirmation after 7 years, he says. The place was a racket, according to Lieutenant Governor Sinha, but there weren't many opportunities either. People only had to look for government jobs. Compare this with Bihar's 5.17 lakh sanctioned jobs for an estimated population now of about 14 crores. That's the comparison he makes. People didn't come to work or just came in the morning and evening to mark their attendance. Now Sinha has brought in facial recognition and controlled the hirings. More importantly, all government contracts are now e-tendered. No more informal word-of-mouth contracts with no paperwork. When I came here, he says, I received a call from Digvijay Singh, who said some acquaintance of his had done some contract work here and wasn't paid for some 8 years. And then Devendra Fadnavis called him for help to get money released to him, and this was money owed to a constituent of his, similarly for an older contract. Sinha said his officers found no records of these contracts having been given or jobs having been carried out. It was all done in the air. It was all verbal. Evidence for this again speaks from the walls in the political, social and cultural heart of Kashmir, Srinagar's Lal Chowk. In New Market, one of the quaint lanes leading to the Jhelum River from Lal Chowk, I find a shop with a sign that simply says e-tendering. See the picture. Inside, the owner, Uwais, wary of talking to a stranger, absolutely unwilling to be photographed, and I do hope he told me his correct name. So Uwais, we'll say that's the name he told me. Inside, Uwais sits with 4 computer screens in front of him and 2 heaps of what looks like keychains, but are actually DSCs or digital signature certificates. His business is helping people file e-tenders, and his clients, hundreds, have left these DSCs in his care. He tells me he used to be in the garment business earlier. At just rupees 200 per e-tender, it has more remunerative possibilities than garments, he says. Whatever happened to the old garment business, he said. He said, I shut it. What happened to the shop where he used to sell the garments from? He said it was the same shop. It is now an e-tendering enabling business in the heart of Kashmir by the Lal Chowk. Manoj Sinha pushing social change too. Earlier, he says, Jammu and Kashmir excise revenue was just about 6 crores. Now it's 365 crores. Because he pushed for liquor license auctions. Now there are 14 liquor shops and he'd like more in the valley. It should be a normal place as in any other part of the country, except of course Bihar and Gujarat would be my somewhat snarky but truthful aside. Lal Chowk itself is filled with tourists posing for selfies and group photos while some paramilitary troops watch unobtrusively if warily. A dozen well-fed dogs lounge as the cats might at Istanbul's more popular spots. The old Sanatan Dharam Dharamshala, the most imposing structure overlooking the storied clock tower at Lal Chowk, is being reconstructed at the kind of speed at which Nitin Gadkari has been building highways in the country. A walk around the corner from it takes you into the heart of what used to be among the toughest protest zones, from Mysoma to Gawa Kadal, where a Jhelum tributary meets its big sister. Gawa Kadal, incidentally, is the place of great massacre of 21st January 1990, when 50 to 100 Kashmiri protesters, more likely closer to the higher figure, were killed in a CRPF firing. This was the fraught era when the Pandits were being driven out, the new militancy was operating, and the state looked barely in control of the banks of the Jhelum. Many would be embarrassed to admit it now, but too many in the security system and also those on the BJP side would simply call this area Pakistan in Srinagar as the area which is also called downtown in Srinagar. Walk with me in all of these areas through lanes lined by beautiful old homes and wooden balconies. See the pictures and sketches or jarokas with their ornate windows. Stop at many of the tiny bakeries, pick up a lightly salted tea bread, mumkeen it's called, and people will walk up to talk about the sorry state of the news media that is us in Delhi. And they will also express sympathy with you and solidarity because they say they know how tough it must be for the few truthful ones to keep it going. These conversations take place almost across the street from the native home of separatist Yasin Malik, now under trial for the murder of 4 Air Force officers, IF officers, on 25th January 1998. I told you what a fraud period that early 1990 was in Kashmir Valley. And the truth is that these conversations could have taken place in any part of Lucknow, Patna, Amritsar, Coimbatore, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Kolkata, Trivandrum, Cochin, wherever in India, just anywhere in the country. The Kashmir Valley is actually quite a small piece of territory, just 135 kilometers at its longest and 35 kilometers at its widest. It is broadly divided into 3 zones, the northern one going to Uri via Baramulla, Gulmarg and Sopore, Kupwara, Gurez and so on. The central one with Srinagar and the adjoining districts, and the large expanse of the south with Anantnag, Pulwama and Shopian. From Shopian begins the old Akbar and Jahangir era Mughal road taking you across the Hum. What is the Hum? That is the Pir Panjal range to the southwest of the valley through the eponymous pass, that is the Pir Panjal Pass, into Poonch and then on to Rajouri and Jammu in the plains. The Poonch and Rajouri districts have now been added to the Anantnag constituency polling this Saturday, rendering it no longer a pure valley seat. Some of its original assembly segments have gone to Srinagar, all of Pulwama and parts of Shopian in particular. With 72 lakh people, it is also quite thickly populated. Endless rows of orchards and paddy fields dotted with small towns and villages that are still faithful to the traditional architectural aesthetic, even in new constructions, and also remarkably clean. You want to see the cleanest villages in India? Please come to Kashmir Valley. By far the cleanest villages, and all of them are clean. It's not as if some village is the cleanest village and that's a showpiece. All of them are clean. In fact, Kashmiris could teach cleanliness to the rest of the country. I use a much maligned ploy of the reporter and ask my driver, how come there is so much new construction, so much apparent prosperity in the valley? Where does it come from? Where do people earn all these incomes? All those building these nice houses, he says, have made money from both sides. सबने दोनों साइड से पैसे बनाए, दोनों साइड से पैसे लिए हैं. What looks good in the valley, in fact, also tells us what's wrong with it. The most profitable business in these decades has been what we might call conflict entrepreneurship. India and Pakistan, militaries, diplomats, but most importantly, intelligence agencies have fought a 77-year-old blood feud over the valley. Both have had plenty of cash to dispense, and on the Indian side, the establishment has tended to look away as the smartest, including politicians, businessmen and generations of government officers, have vacuum cleaned the money the centre keeps throwing at the problem. Almost all Kashmiri politicians and their dynasties have benefited from the conflict. None except the Abdullahs have been found to be openly willing to say they are Indian and there is no future for the valley except as an integral part of India. There is profit in ambiguity. Some of that is now changing under force, but it's having to change. The Modi government has had 5 years to build a new political class in Kashmir, but it failed at it. So stark is this failure that it isn't even fielding candidates in the 3 seats of the valley. Before you jump up and say, nor is the Congress, I will remind you that its partner, the National Conference, has been allocated the 3 valley seats. The Congress is contesting 2 in the Jammu region and the solitary one in Ladakh. The centre could have built a new grassroots politics if only it had succeeded in holding the panchayat elections. But for that, the law would have had to be amended to give reservations to scheduled castes and tribes, which needed a constitutional change through parliament. Nobody in New Delhi now found the time to do it in 5 years. That's why the building of that new grassroots leadership still remains a stillborn project. The centre therefore decided to do it top down. It looked for native talent to form its own parties and counter the established ones. For evidence, check out what Home Minister Amit Shah has been saying. Vote for anybody you wish, but not for National Conference, that's the Abdullahs, the PDP or People's Democratic Party, that's the Muftis, or the Congress. Translated, it means vote for Apni Party. Founded by hugely successful entrepreneur, former Mufti loyalist and minister Altaf Bukhari. Bukhari is a graduate of agro-engineering. He also says he holds a diploma from Delhi University's formidable Faculty of Management Studies, 1980 batch. He has businesses in the valley, but most of his fortune comes from elsewhere. From his agrochemicals plants in Gujarat's Valsad, for example. He also builds and installs, in partnership in joint venture with a French company, India's largest gondolas or cable cars. One from Dehradun to Mussoorie is near completion. His next big one will be a city connectivity project in Varanasi, a place as flat as any you can find. Many Kashmiris, old and young, will tell you his party is the establishment's party, a front for the BJP. Are you connected with the BJP? Are you close to the BJP? Are you working with Delhi? I asked him during a campaign break at village of Brenti Batpora near Anantnag, while he feeds us a full Kashmiri meal with multiple dishes of meat just garnished with some usual lotus stem and paneer. Of course I am. I am never shy of saying that. Who will I work with if not Delhi? Islamabad? He asks. Kashmir's tragedy, in fact, and I am saying that, Kashmir's tragedy is that everybody works with Delhi but pretends they don't. And they keep looking at the other side too. That has to change now. The future of Kashmiris, Bukhari believes, lies in working with New Delhi and giving up all ambiguity. Is Bukhari going to win? Of course he'd say he will, but he doesn't seem overly concerned if he doesn't. He sees a new future to himself. His party, with cricket bat as its symbol, like Imran Khan's PTI in Pakistan, his party is the closest you would see in Kashmir to an old-fashioned king's party. All he wants the centre to do right now is to look kindly at the people it has punished, the 1,000 plus in long detention, many in jails in faraway states that puts their families through great inconvenience, also through great torture, because they have to take permission to go and meet their people who are detained, and very often permission is not granted. It is all about making peace with young people, he argues. Not one of the stone throwers or militants was older than 20 or so. They have a full life ahead of them. He then introduces his followers who have to report at a police station every evening because they were found indulging in stone throwing in the 1990s. So he says, how long will these punishments continue? Once again, he talks about the same familiar FIR Raj. We hear similar words from some of his younger, equally articulate rivals. Wahidur Rahman Para of Mehbooba Mufti's PDP is asking for a reconciliation process and amnesty for the jailed youth. He used to be a key aide of Mehbooba when she was Chief Minister in partnership with BJP. He has now spent the better part of the last 6 years since that coalition broke in jail, with the charges against him including terror funding. I quote him now, "We accept the constitution, we accept India. Where is the problem then? Why won't the centre trust us?" The second is Sajjad Lone in Srinagar. He's revived his slain father's People's Conference, is contesting from Baramulla and is seen as favoured by Delhi. His father, Abdul Ghani Lone, was a founder and key figure in the now banned and defunct Hurriyat. He was assassinated, obviously on the orders of the ISI. There is also the top cleric in the valley, Mirwais Muhammad Umar Farooq, still in some kind of house arrest or at least restraint. I spoke with him on the phone and he said while he would love to meet me, he wouldn't be permitted to. As in, I wouldn't be allowed into his home as interactions have been limited to close relatives, he said. Like Lone, his father was also a founder of Hurriyat and assassinated at the ISI's behest. At one point, the senior Mirwais or the senior Maulvi Farooq had also joined hands with Farooq Abdullah in what was called the double Farooq arrangement. Aren't you confused now? You can find 1,000 Kashmir experts, but anybody halfway honest will tell you that its politics confounds them. Think of Kashmir as an IPL equivalent that's gone on for 77 years with the same franchises, shuffling the same players. So one year, one player is playing this side, next year the other side, and then they go back and forth. In the course of time, you've forgotten who's been in and out of where and when. It's like everybody is a journeyman in Kashmiri politics. Even Google will be confused. Meanwhile, a new player has risen in this old gathering. Sheikh Abdul Rashid, mostly known as Engineer Rashid, has been in jail for 5 years on charges of terror funding. He is contesting the Baramulla seat from Tihar. He is drawing the largest, most enthusiastic crowds. Responses to his absentee campaign, led by his college-going son Abrar Rashid, have been nothing short of messianic. The slogan, "Zulm ka jawab vote se," we will fight oppression with votes. In fact, the line you would hear most often from his supporters would be, "Is baar pressure cooker ki seeti bajegi." Why? Because his election symbol is a pressure cooker. At a PDP rally, I find a child with a Peace with Dignity poster on his t-shirt. See the picture. And he's giving a V sign for Praveen Jain, our photo editor. The unprecedented response in this campaign. the highest everywhere since 1996 and the highest ever in Baramulla, is telling us something. As is a coaching center called Hope Academy in Anantnag and cafe called Kappa Curiosity in Baramulla. It's all very good, or so far so good. Just don't rush to conclude that it shows the problem in the valley is over. That will be overinterpreting a positive change dangerously. This voting has given a quiet people a new voice, an outlet and also an opportunity to vent, bhadas nikalne ke liye, if only through the vote. It is one giant catharsis and it is still work in progress.